My stepson said, "You're just mom's temporary paycheck." So I emptied my side of the closet, locked the garage, and left his Xbox in the driveway. The update never finished. He laughed. Not loud. Just a dry, amused puff through his nose, like he'd seen through a joke the rest of us hadn't even heard yet. But it was enough. Enough to fracture something that had already been cracking for years. My mother was reaching for the salad bowl, passing it to him like she always did. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said, using that word again. Habit, hope, or maybe just old reflex, the kind love teaches you before reality unteaches it. Justin didn't even look up from his plate, just pushed her hand aside and said, "Stop calling me your grandson. You're not." The table went silent. Not gasps, not shouts, just stillness. The kind that sucks the warmth out of the room and makes every fork and glass suddenly sound too loud. And then he smirked, looked around as if someone might laugh with him, like he thought he'd said something clever, like we were all in on the same cruel joke. But we weren't. My mother froze, the bowl still in her hands. Her smile didn't vanish, it just died there, suspended. She nodded slowly, set the bowl down without another word, and started cutting her chicken into perfect, uneaten squares. I watched her eyes drop to her plate. She never looked up again for the rest of dinner. Nobody said anything. Not Sarah, my wife. Not the other kids. And not me, not right away. Because when someone hits you clean, right in the soul, it doesn't bleed at first. It bruises, goes cold. Couldn't even move. Justin had known my mother since he was 2. She used to change his diapers while Sarah was still figuring out how to co-parent with a ghost of an ex-husband. She held his hand through tantrums, taught him how to tie his shoes, read him Goodnight Moon so many times the spine fell apart. Every Christmas, she sewed his stocking by hand, with a new button or trinket stitched into the fabric to mark how much he'd grown. He called her Grandma before he ever called me Dad. But none of that mattered now. Now he was 19, lean with that boyish arrogance that passes for confidence. A sophomore in college, drunk off his own thoughts, full of half-digested opinions from professors and podcasts. And in that moment he erased her. Not because she deserved it, not even because he meant it, but because he could. He'd grown tall enough, bold enough to look a woman in the eye, the woman who'd rocked him to sleep and waited up for him after high school parties, and say, "You're not real." Sarah cleared her throat. "Justin." But he didn't respond. He was already chewing. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He smiled at it, thumbed the screen, and kept eating. My mother didn't speak for the rest of the evening. Later, after dessert, she slipped off to bed early, saying she had a headache. I knew she didn't. I knew what she had was heartbreak. I waited until the rest of them were asleep. The fire had gone out in the living room, the embers breathing soft red in the stone hearth. I stepped into the guest room where she lay beneath the quilt, turned toward the wall like a child hiding from nightmares. She didn't look at me, just said, "Did I do something wrong?" That's what stayed with me. Not Justin's words, not Sarah's silence, but that my mother, questioning herself for offering love to someone who'd taken it like oxygen for 17 years and now refused to breathe it. "You did nothing wrong," I said, sitting beside her. She reached for my hand. It was cold. Not from the room. From the way she was withdrawing, one breath at a time. I stayed there until she fell asleep. Then I walked through the darkened kitchen, poured a glass of whiskey, and sat alone at the table where it had happened. That cabin had always been our family's peace. A place away from the city, from pressure. It had pine beams overhead, soft yellow lights, the smell of cedar and slow-cooked meals. I had built that peace. Every payment, every repair, every damn log on the fire had come from these hands. And tonight, it had been shattered by a smirk and a sentence. Couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the years, 2 decades almost, of sacrifice. Preschool, summer camps, sports training, his first car, college tuition. I paid for it all. Every last dollar. Even when Sarah said we should wait, I said yes. When his father forgot birthdays, I remembered. When he cried about friends or girls or school, it was my shoulder he leaned on. When he needed to be picked up at 2 a.m., From a party I drove without complaint. Not once did I ask to be repaid. But lately, no thank yous, no respect. He called me David now, not Dad. Said it like a punchline. Introduced me to his friends with a casual "my mom's husband," as if I'd shown up last week. And now he humiliated my mother. In my house. At my table. Sarah's voice from earlier played over and over in my head. He's just growing up. No, he wasn't. He was grown enough to wield cruelty with precision. And if Sarah wouldn't step in, then I would. In the morning, Justin emerged wearing sweatpants and that same damn smirk. Sat at the table, poured cereal, scrolling his phone like nothing had happened. My mother stayed in her room. The rest of the family moved around him carefully, like he was some kind of weather system we just had to wait out. And that's when I knew. It had never been about age, or adjustment, or boys being boys. It was about permission. It was about what we allowed to happen. Sarah had allowed this. With her silence, her excuses, her soft reprimands that never meant anything. She never made him apologize, never drew a line, and so he kept walking forward, knocking things over, laughing as he did it. Well, I was done cleaning up the wreckage. I didn't confront him that day. I didn't scream. I didn't lay into him with the fury that boiled just beneath my ribs. That would have given him power, the power to say I'd overreacted, the power to play the victim. No, I needed something cleaner, colder, something that would actually register. So I waited until they all left the cabin for a hike. Waited until the house fell silent. Then I went to my room and opened the drawer where I kept every document I once told myself I'd never need. Tuition bills, credit card statements, insurance policies, bank transfers, all of it. I printed them one by one, black ink on white paper, each sheet a ledger of my sacrifice. Then I opened the laptop, logged into the bank. I went methodically, canceling the monthly tuition transfer first. Then the joint credit card I'd added him to just in case. Insurance plan gone. Cell phone line disconnected. His name unraveled from every account I'd ever attached it to. It took 40 minutes to erase a decade. When it was done, I put the stack of papers in a plain folder. No note, no dramatic flourish, just the facts printed and dry. Then I left it on the kitchen counter. That evening, I sat outside by the fire pit while they returned. I heard the screen door open, Justin's voice rising as he joked about something on the trail. Heard the laughter, the footsteps. Then I heard silence, the kind that only comes when truth has made its entrance. Inside, he stood frozen in front of the counter, flipping through the papers. His voice cracked through the quiet. "What the hell is this?" I didn't respond. Not yet. He pulled out his phone, tried to tap something. A pause. Then, declined? "Are you kidding me right now?" That's when I stepped in from the porch. "Sit down," I said. He hesitated. Looked at Sarah. She said nothing. Her face was tight, unreadable. Maybe she'd seen the folder already. Maybe she hadn't. But either way, she didn't stop me. Justin sat, the folder in front of him like a court summons. "I want to know why," I said. "You thought it was okay to speak to my mother the way you did." He didn't even blink. "It was a joke." I stared at him. "You saw her face. You know it wasn't a joke." He shrugged, but it was too practiced, too polished. Like a move he'd used before and gotten away with. "I mean, come on. She's not really my grandmother. Let's not pretend." And then he said it. The line that would end everything. "You're just Mom's temporary paycheck. Don't overestimate your role." He said it casually, like it was some clever punchline. And in that moment, something died. I didn't shout. I didn't flinch. I just stood there, nodding slowly, letting the words dig into my ribs and hollow out whatever warmth was left. "Thank you," I said. He blinked, confused. "For what?" "For finally telling the truth." I turned, walked back to the bedroom, pulled my suitcase from the closet. I didn't slam drawers. I folded everything, methodical and slow. Sarah followed me in, her voice hushed. "David, please, don't do this." But I already was. I was packing not just clothes. I was packing history. Every shirt folded was a memory revoked. Every zipper a door closing. I'm not angry, I told her. Not anymore. I'm just done pretending I have a place here. You do have a place here, she whispered. No, I said. I had a function, and now that function's been replaced by mockery. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands knotted in her lap. He's young. He doesn't know what he's saying. That's not true, I said, and the words came out sharp. He knows exactly what he's saying. He's known for a long time, and so have you. She looked up at me then, and for a moment I saw guilt, real guilt, in her eyes. But she didn't argue, didn't fight. She let me pack. When I finished, I walked through the garage, unplugged the opener, took the spare key from the hook and set it on the bench. His Xbox sat in the corner, tangled in wires. I picked it up, carried it to the driveway and set it down gently. Not smashed, not broken, just removed. A symbol, maybe, or a message. I wasn't sure anymore. Then I drove. I didn't come back that night, or the next. I booked a small motel an hour out, the kind with bad wallpaper and the smell of pine cleaner soaked into the carpets. I lay there on the stiff mattress, staring at the ceiling, wondering if they even noticed I was gone. The next morning I made a few calls. First, to the university, spoke to the bursar's office, informed them that future payments wouldn't be coming from me. Then to the phone company to remove the family plan. Then to the insurance provider, where I learned just how many medical costs I'd quietly shouldered for someone who now claimed I was nothing but a wallet. And finally, to my accountant. I asked her to draw up a clear financial partition. I would no longer subsidize any expenses not explicitly tied to my wife and I. No blended luxuries. No quietly absorbed fees. She asked if I wanted to leave a discretionary emergency fund for Justin. I said no. When I hung up, I felt like I just surfaced from a deep dive. Breathless, cold, but alive. That afternoon, I began contacting family friends, people I trusted. I told them quietly that if Justin came looking for help, money, housing, favors, they should send him to me. That I needed to see who he was when the rug was pulled. 3 days passed. On the 4th, there was a knock at my workshop door. I opened it to find Justin standing there, shoulders hunched, eyes red. I messed up, he said. Not loud, not defiant, just deflated. I was wrong. I didn't speak, just stepped aside. He walked in like a man who'd been wandering, like the silence of the world had taught him more than any lecture ever could. He looked around at the sawdust, the old tools, the wood I hadn't touched in days. Is she okay? He asked. My mother, I said. No, but she will be. He nodded, didn't argue, just stood there, twisting his hands like a boy again. I stared at him for a long time, watched the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes flicked between mine and the floor. I need to see her, he said finally. I need to say something. I arranged the meeting. She was hesitant, of course, scared even, but she agreed. When she walked into the shop, Justin stood. No smirk this time, no cool detachment, just a boy facing the woman he'd wounded. He opened his mouth, closed it, then said, You've always been like a grandmother to me, and I threw that in your face for no reason. I'm sorry. And she just hugged him. He collapsed into her arms like he was two again. Like the last 17 years weren't built on distance and assumption and teenage pride. He cried. She held him, and I watched, and I waited, because remorse is one thing, but change, that would have to come next. He cried like a child, and I let him. I didn't step in, didn't soften. I watched Justin weep into my mother's cardigan like he hadn't turned her into an afterthought just days before. Her hand trembled on his back. She didn't say anything comforting. She just held him because sometimes that's all broken things can do. Cling to each other and hope the pieces hold. Afterward, he wiped his face with his sleeve, eyes swollen and red, and sat down across from me in the shop. My mother, bless her, kissed his temple and said she'd go for a walk. She left quietly, didn't even look at me. That hurt more than I expected. I stayed in my chair, arms folded. Justin looked around the room. At the chisels, the unfinished shelves, the old heater wheezing in the corner. He cleared his throat. "Thanks for letting that happen," he said. I didn't reply. He scratched the back of his neck, a nervous tic I'd seen 1,000 times. "Look," he tried again. "I know I messed up. Bad. What I said, I wasn't thinking." "You were thinking," I said quietly. "You just weren't caring." He didn't argue. "I don't expect everything to go back to how it was," he said. "But I was hoping maybe we could start over." I raised an eyebrow. "Start over?" "Yeah," he said, his voice hopeful and raw. "Like, I get that I need to earn back trust. I get that now." I studied him. Not just his face, but everything. The slouch in his spine. The way he kept his hands folded like he was praying. He looked like a kid who'd been dragged behind life's truck for a few miles and finally decided to walk on his own. But words are cheap, so I gave him silence. Eventually, he added, "I know I don't deserve help right now. I just want to do better. Whatever that looks like." There it was. Not entitlement. Not manipulation. But humility. I tapped a folder on the workbench. He looked at it. Inside was a job application for a local auto parts store and a budget I had drafted myself: phone, food, rent, gas. The basics. Nothing extra. No luxuries. "I already applied," I said. "In your name. Interviews Friday." His eyes widened. "You?" "I've been making calls since the day I left the cabin," I said. "This," I nodded at the folder, "is what doing better looks like." He opened it. Scanned it. His face twisted, confused, maybe overwhelmed. "You want me to get a job?" "I want you to stop living off people you insult." His cheeks flushed, but he nodded. "And if I get it?" he asked. "If I take the job? You keep it. You show up. You pay your own bills." He looked up. "No more help." I didn't blink. Help comes after accountability, not instead of it. That sat between us like a wall. He exhaled, deep and tired. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it." And he did. The job was part-time, minimum wage, boring. Stocking shelves, answering phones, dealing with customers who thought they knew more than he did. But he showed up. On time. Tired, but present. The first paycheck he brought home was small. He held it up to me like a trophy. "You gonna frame it?" I asked. He grinned. "Maybe just cash it." He used that check to pay for his phone bill and half his car insurance. I covered the rest, but only because he asked. Not assumed. Not demanded. We made a new plan. He'd budget his expenses every month and bring them to me. I'd match what he earned if he earned it. If he didn't, he'd go without. It wasn't punishment. It was reality. There were slip-ups. One weekend, he went out with friends and overdrafted his account. Bought drinks and gas like he was still floating on invisible money. When the card bounced, he came home furious. "You could have warned me," he said. I looked at him and said, "You're 19. Life is the warning." He didn't argue after that. The next week, he came back with receipts, notes on where he spent every dollar. No excuses. Just honesty. It was the first time I felt proud of him in over a year. But pride is fragile. One night, Sarah pulled me aside. Her eyes soft. Her voice hesitant. "I think he's really trying," she said. I nodded. "So do I." She bit her lip. "Maybe we could help a little more. Just ease up a bit?" I stared at her. "Help with what?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe his next semester. A book fund. Something." I took a long breath. "You want me to undo the one thing that's finally made him grow?" She looked away. Didn't answer. Because deep down, she knew. Justin wasn't who he was now because we coddled him. He was who he was because I stopped letting love mean enabling. Later that week, during another dinner, this time at home, just the three of us, my mother stopped by. Unannounced. She carried a tray of baked pasta. Said she made too much. She hadn't. She never did anything unintentionally. We sat at the table, plates full, silence comfortable. Then Justin looked up at her and said, "Grandma." Don't forget the sauce next time. It was small, casual, but she smiled. Not a fake one, a real one. He said it like it had never been in question. And that was the moment I exhaled. Not because everything was perfect. Not because he was fixed. But because he was trying. And trying, I'd learned, is the only thing you can really ask of someone who once called you nothing. The Xbox stayed in the dust. Still out there in the garage where I'd left it weeks ago. Cables wound around it like a discarded memory. I didn't bring it back in. He never asked. And that silence became its own understanding. Some things, once set down, don't need to be picked up again. Justin didn't need it anymore. Not because he'd grown above games or screens or escapism, but because something in him had shifted. He was still 19. Still prone to stupid jokes and eye rolls and the occasional passive shrug. But the edges had changed. Softened in some places, sharpened in others. The thank yous started small. At first, they felt forced. Mechanical. "Thanks for dinner," he'd say, eyes still glued to his plate. Or "appreciate the ride," as he hopped out of the car. But over time, they got weight. He said them without prompt. Said them when it was inconvenient. Said them when it was deserved. Respect, I realized, doesn't arrive in thunderclaps. Creeps in like the tide. One morning, I found him folding laundry. His own. Without being asked. I didn't comment. Just walked past. But later that day, I left $20 on the table. No note. No ceremony. He came into the workshop that evening, held up the bill. "What's this for?" "For trying," I said. He smiled. That quiet, teenage smile that says, "I get it, but I won't say it out loud." He didn't spend it on nonsense. Bought his mom flowers. Grocery store carnations wrapped in cellophane, the kind people pass without noticing. But Sarah noticed. She smiled when she saw them. Held them like they were something sacred. Set them in a glass of water because we didn't own a proper vase. And I noticed too, because for the first time in years, she didn't have to fill the silence between us with justifications. She didn't have to explain his mood, soften his tone, play translator for a boy too old to need one. She could just be a mother proud of a son finally earning the title of man. That night, when we were in bed, she reached for my hand. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for not stepping in sooner." I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't hear her, but because apologies, like forgiveness, aren't light switches. They take time, and time takes truth. But after a long silence, I said, "Thank you," and that was enough. Justin and I found a rhythm. Not friends. Not father and son in the traditional sense. But something more honest. A man and a boy slowly building trust brick by brick. Even as the ruins of old expectations still smoldered nearby. He took more hours at work. Started bringing home receipts. Asking questions about budgeting. We set up a spreadsheet. I watched him type numbers with furrowed brows. His tongue sticking out slightly like it did when he was a kid focused on tying his shoes. He wasn't perfect. One night he came home drunk. Not dangerously so, but enough that he stumbled in, mumbled something about regret, and passed out half on the couch, half on the floor. I didn't scold him, just left a glass of water on the end table and 2 aspirin on a napkin. In the morning, he cleaned the bathroom without being asked. Growth isn't linear. It zigzags, trips over itself, doubts itself, but it moves. He started visiting my mother once a week. Not because I asked, because he wanted to. Sometimes they watched old movies. Sometimes they didn't talk at all. Just sat. 2 people trying to stitch over a tear they both pretended wasn't there until it split. She started calling him sweetheart. Again. Softly. Like testing an old song on her lips. He never flinched. Not once. At dinner, he started saying grace. Short, awkward sentences. Nothing rehearsed. Thanks for the food. And for work. And for stuff. I didn't laugh. I just bowed my head. Sarah watched him like she was seeing him for the first time in years. Maybe she was. One Sunday we had the family over. His younger cousins. Sarah's sister. My brother. My mother. Laughter echoed through the hallways. Justin grilled burgers. Burned too. laughed about it. No sulking, no eye rolls. And then he said it. Grandma, don't forget the sauce. She chuckled, rolled her eyes. You still like it sweet? He nodded. Just like always. That moment, I'll carry it with me. Not because it fixed everything. Not because it erased the nights I laid awake questioning why I stayed, why I paid, why I cared. But because in that one exchange, I saw that we weren't pretending anymore. No one needed to tiptoe. No one needed to translate. He wasn't acting like family. He was family. Earned, not assumed. Later that evening, when the house quieted and dishes were done, I stepped outside onto the porch. Justin followed, 2 beers in hand. He offered me one without a word. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he said, "Do you think people can change?" I took a sip. "Only when it hurts enough to matter." He nodded. "That hurt," he admitted. I nodded back. It was supposed to. We didn't say anything else. Just watched the stars blink into the sky like they were punching holes in the darkness. He's not perfect. Neither am I. But I stopped needing him to call me dad. I stopped needing recognition printed in titles. What I needed, what I demanded, was respect. And now he gives it. Freely. Because I took it once. And never gave it back until he asked for it the right way. So now I ask you, if you were in my shoes, would you have waited longer? Would you have swallowed the insult and paid anyway? Would you have let love mean servitude, silence, self-erasure? Or would you have done what I did? Stood up, stepped back, and let the bill come due? Tell me, was I wrong? Or was that the only way to teach him what love without respect truly costs?